mic'd up.
You're good.
Good.
All right, guys. Just want to introduce the firm. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. This is Janice Baker and Associates, court reporting firm. This is Jana, and Janice is actually in the back there. She's the firm owner. Firm has been, how old is the firm?
It's about 40 years old.
About 40 years old. All right, so this is a staple in Atlanta. And they have been really instrumental in partnering with the school. They have not only taken many students out on externships, currently have students on externship with them, they've also hired students. So they're taking some time off to come here and speak with you guys, introduce the firm, and working with them from a freelance perspective. So without further ado, this is Ms. Janet Baker. Oh, one other thing. I put on here, I can pass it out, this thing, Survey Junkie, that's for you guys to give us some feedback on it. If you do not get your questions answered, please write them on there, and I will forward those questions to Jana so that we can get those answers for you and get them back to you, because as you see, we're running out of time. All right? Ms. Jana.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you to Brown for having us here today. As Mark said, my name is Jana Zetto, and I'm Janice's daughter, and I help to manage the firm along with my brother Rich and my husband Paul. So it really is a family affair, and I'm really honored that my mom is here with me today, because as we talk, I want you to understand that I have a background in social work and sales and fundraising and all that stuff. I have grown up in court reporting. I now help manage a court reporting firm, but the true technician and surgeon behind our business and the backbone of it is my mom, Janice. So just so you know, when you're asking your questions, to get the real expertise, my mom, Janice Baker. So just as we start, so I know the room a little bit more, how many of you have heard me speak up here before? So I won't share. Okay, so I probably need to come up with some new things to say, huh? Okay, pressure's on. Okay, so I guess you guys have kind of heard my discussion about, with my background in social work, how I kind of framed my professional life. Y'all have heard that little anecdote, right? About how I was just pretty much kind of doing my own thing, being a social worker, not a lot of money. Mom's driving a flashy car, flashy clothes, out on the golf course. What I didn't know, though, was the larger role of my mom in being a business owner, understanding she works hard. She'd be out on the golf course certainly by 3 o'clock, having a cocktail on her back porch by 5. But she didn't talk about how she would get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning to get job sheets out to reporters, to work on a transcript, things of that nature. So I'm not going to come here today and sell you a book of goods about how in just some short time you'll turn around and be making 6 figures. You turn around and you'll know exactly what you're doing, because reporting is a lot about on-the-job experience. And I really got to commend Mark Green, who really has a particular aptitude with all of you guys about encouraging you to do externships, encouraging you to ask what it's really like to be in this profession, to take that theory and turn it into practice. So today I'm going to talk to you about working with a court reporting agency. So I'm going to try to manage a couple of different slides and things like that. A survey's involved after, so that kind of threw me off. I'm like, I have a particular challenge to try to do a good job for you guys. Okay, so our firm was started in the early 80s. My mom started it. She saw a need as she was an official in the Clayton County judicial system, that a lot of the people she was coming into contact with would say, hey, we need a court reporter for this deposition coming up. Do you know anybody? And so Mom, being sort of the just the woman that she is, she was just like, yeah, I got to start a court reporting agency. This is definitely a need here, and came to that. And so one thing I did want to drop back and ask you guys is that if you do have questions, please do write them down, and we'll try to answer them. And we'll take a little time, because I want you to get a chance to kind of ask some questions of us. And so, been around a long time. We have a huge footprint in the state of Georgia. We have about 15 court reporters working with us. We have an active mentorship program that we support at our agency. One of our core values is that we take new emerging court reporters in the field and spend time with them, providing mentorship, providing one-on-one meetings with different reporters and one-on-one meetings with our staff to try to help them become the professional that we know they can be. So thanks, Mark. And so what does it mean to work for an agency? When you're working with a court reporting agency, you're not an employee. You're a 1099 subcontractor. We look at it this way. We're doing business with other businesses. We're doing business with other businesses. You're not an employee. I'm not your employer. We're in partnership together to try to meet your needs and make you successful so that our business can be successful. And it's important to remember that as you're exploring what court reporting firms to work with, each court reporting firm has a very different culture. And so you'll need to seek out court reporting firms that have a similar sort of mindset that you do, a similar culture. We're a family-owned business. So, and we're doing a tremendous amount of work with a core few people. And so if you're looking for a larger experience with a larger court reporting entity where you're one of many, then our firm is not your answer. If you're looking for a smaller firm to kind of get your feet wet in, start build your way up, perhaps our firm is one to consider. People ask me a lot about what traits are needed to be a successful court reporter. What kind of traits do you think are needed to be a successful court reporter? I'll ask you guys that. Absolutely, absolutely. Attention to detail. Anyone else? What's that? That's perfect. Yeah, adaptive. Absolutely. To be adaptable to multiple places, multiple people, different personalities, different locations, things like that. Very good. Anyone else?
Time management.
Punctual determination.
Good time management.
Good time management. Absolutely. Absolutely. Particularly to work in the world of freelance court reporting. You have to, if you want to pursue it fully, you have to have a commitment to time management. That even though a deposition, you get in at 10 o'clock, it ends at 11, that you're not sitting down in front of your TV like I would be tempted to do. You're sitting down in front of your desk processing the work you just took down and things like that. So another couple of traits y'all can think of? Absolutely, diligence and responsibility. Professional maturity is a big one for us. This is I can't say enough, a very mature profession, as you guys know. It takes an awful lot for you to be able to communicate professionally, to be able to say, hey, you know what? I know this job is due on Tuesday. I need help in advance of that to sit down and go over the transcript. Or I'm going to get you exhibits at 3 o'clock the day before the job's due. Just kind of communicating, overly communicating with your firm. I always call it, my husband uses this term, level set expectations. I think that's really critical in this work, right? That we're meeting your expectation and you in turn are meeting ours. And we're in turn meeting the client's larger expectations. And so, and also, I wanted to say this. I talked to a couple of our reporters in advance of this discussion today, and I said, what is it that you would impart to emerging court reporters? And she said, remember the end user when you're preparing a transcript. Remember that there could be a judge opening an original in preparation for trial, and he doesn't want to have to look around to get his answer, he and his clerk. They want to have a transcript that's clear, with an index that's clear, where they can find their answer quickly and easily and not be troubled by a typo that maybe they saw a couple of pages before, or that's a crazy misspelling on a medical term that perhaps they're trying to get the answer for and things like that. Think also about the attorney that is preparing for his deposition the next day, and he's sitting at his desk at 11 o'clock at night looking at your deposition. And he's tired, and he just needs the answer on this particular nagging question that he has in preparation. And then also think about the end user being our firm, like a firm, a court reporting firm. When I get back to the office, I have 6 deposition transcripts to produce and bill and get out the door. And after that, I'll have another 16 more before the week is over. So one in a pipeline of transcripts. So clear directions about whether signature was reserved or not, where the exhibits are, making sure that your title page is set up appropriately and things like that. And then just let it be readable and thoughtfully put together. I have things like, are your exhibits described clearly in your index for the person producing the job? I had a situation just recently where a reporter turned in a transcript, and in the exhibit index she put email, 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 email. And it was a series of 15 emails. How do you think she could have made that easier for me to produce? Let me ask you that question.
Maybe to date it.
Date it. What else? Absolutely. Yeah, so you're getting it. I always tell our new reporters, when you think you finished the transcript, get up and walk around the block and come back and look at it one more time. And look at it through my lens of a firm owner, or through the lens of, say, the judge or the attorney, like we talked about. And then as I was preparing this too, I have a coffee mug, not the one I'm with, but I'm constantly drinking coffee, but it has a scales of justice on it. And I thought, this is really appropriate for this presentation that I'm giving, because court reporting is about the scales of justice. It's about neutrality. It's about being fair and even-handed in the work that you do. It's about making sure that you provide a quality to work to one client that you do to the other client. It's about, if you're unsure if signature is reserved, letting the firm know so that I can let the attorneys know who is, because you're a custodian of that record. You're the steward of getting a transcript, a quality transcript to someone for a larger issue that may be going on for years at a time. Mom, do you want to add anything? Not yet? Okay. All right. Do y'all have any questions? Okay. And don't wait until, did somebody have a question? Okay. Don't wait until too late in the process to ask for help too. It's really important that, again, you communicate, that you're always letting everybody know if there's a potential problem or issue. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Mark. And I put this in here, starting your freelance career, that it's important that you realize that like to do business with other businesses, meaning that we like to know that the reporters that we're working with have an accounting of all of their billables. Say we had a trouble with a client, or we're trying to get out a report of all of the work related to this one case. And so we want to work with businesses where a reporter can pull up her own QuickBooks spreadsheet of all the work that she's done related to the case. Or I like to talk to a reporter. I talked to some of our reporters around tax time, and they said, my business, is it better structured tax if I do this, this, or that? I mean, it's just refreshing to work with businesses as opposed to individuals. So on the front side, I would encourage you to talk to an accountant so you're not bit by the tax bug. I would encourage you to set up sort of an LLC or an S Corp, or however you're going to structure your business. Take the time to do that on the front end. Also, to set up little things like real legal auto signature, so you're not sending in cert pages, wasting your own business money on sending me 2 cert pages in the mail. That you've got a scanner in place to do print color exhibits, so that there's not, exhibits aren't lost in the mail, that you have a chain of custody for your exhibits and things like that. So those are the things that reporters get right into the process of being a reporter, but I think it behooves a lot of reporters to kind of step back and build their own business practices. Do you have anything to add to that? Okay, all right, okay. Anybody else have questions about that? Yeah, and so when you do a transcript, you'll do a cert page and or a disclosure form. And then with some of the transcript software that the agencies use. Like, have you heard of Real Legal? Okay, so Real Legal is actually what you would do as a freelance reporter. You would drop, or whatever you do, you would take the transcript, drop it into Real Legal, and then from there it would produce for me an end product that looks like this. And I'll pass this around in a minute. A transcript with a searchable word index and a condensed transcript. That's my end product. You drop it into my box and I turn around and I produce it like this. And so what I'm saying is that with these sort of programs, and the agency will tell you from the onset which software they're using and give you access to it. And from there, you'll need to kind of set it up on your computer, and you'll need to, you have the option of setting up auto signature. If you don't set up auto signature, then you'll have to get, there's no either around it. You'll find yourself at the post office constantly mailing out a certificate and disclosure form. And once you become a busy reporter, that just doesn't make sense, right? That's lost time, and time is everything when you're a court reporter. And so those sort of things, setting up auto signatures, things like that, setting up files for all of your work, things like that. And so, all right, I'm next. Thanks, ma'am. That's okay. And so I'm going to have Mom talk to you a little bit about the nuances of court and hearings and things like that. I cannot speak to that as well as she could. So do you guys have any questions about court, hearings, things like that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are they responsible for having all of the work proofread, or does the agency do that?
So different agencies have different parameters for that. How we do it is that if you're a new reporter coming into us, fresh from Brown, you get linked with our in-house proofreader for your first 3 transcripts. I have, and you pay for it, but I have open communication with the proofreader to talk about whether you're ready to move on, how you're progressing in your work, what it's looking like. Then from after 3 transcripts, it's up to you to either continue the professional relationship or to find your own proofreader from there. But proofreaders are, you gotta make the time to find a good proofreader, make the time to pay a proofreader. That's invaluable. I mean, I can't say enough. That's been the death sentence for a couple of court reporters that I've known, unfortunately. So, any other questions? That's a good question, by the way. Okay, so you wanna talk, Janice, about court and hearings and what it's like?
In a recovery mode from some surgery that, frankly, I shouldn't still be recovering, but it didn't go so well. Anyway, the business about the court, the proofreader, is I would just stress that it's, for me, you have to have a proofreader. And a smart person, a smart court reporter, is going to have a proofreader. Probably our best court reporter, certainly the one that we give all the hard stuff to, or at least talk with her about, started with me as a new person when I first started growing, and I realized pretty quick that this proofreader was going to be essential to her, and after that I came to believe it was essential to everyone. But I actually could work as a proofreader, so I always read my own things, but then, let me try to say that better. I didn't work every day out taking down like people these days expect to work, and there's a lot of emphasis put on going out every day, taking down, and the work's out there. But you have to get out the work, and that would get into the things Janice mentioned about you're up at 5 or 6 o'clock to to work on a transcript. If you are busy and you are human, you get tired. And it doesn't matter how good you are, you get tired. And that means your brain can get tired too, and you're not as sharp. And quite possibly a lot of you in the early years are not going to be getting up at 6 a.m. so that you can get some business done in time to make a tea time or some party, something you want to do early and quit working that day at 3, whatever. But you may be trying to establish your career and you need to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and read something and work on it and shoot that off, the digital off to a proofreader who's gonna, while you do the next job, that proofreader's reading over yours. Now, it does cost to have a proofreader, and the rates, I'm sure, have gone up since I've ever used one. And I haven't asked any of our girls lately what they're paying. When we're paying, do you know what we pay?
It really varies.
It does? Well, I'm sorry that I can't give you a range, but, and I expect were I a proofreader, I would also work on, my rate would go up if you said, can you have this for me tomorrow? Or can you have it by Friday? Just like we as court reporters, our rate goes up. If I were a proofreader, so would I, and if you handed me a medical and you needed me to check all your work on it, I'm going to charge you more. So you would want to discuss with that proofreader on the front side, all right, this is, you know, a medical, and I'll just tell you right off, it's a specialty I never had before, and I really need your expertise here, and I need it in 2 days. How much is that going to cost me? Everybody talks money. Maybe it was just my generation, but we were always somehow thinking that we were supposed to be able to do all this stuff and give it away. You know, we didn't charge extra, and nobody else charged us extra. But you need to be able to do that, and that all those habits follow you into the courtroom setting to get to what she asked me to do. In a courtroom setting, you'll go, I don't know, maybe depending on the court and what's going on and whether it's state or superior court or whatever, you may go a few days and not take down anything that has to be transcribed right away. And then you'll have someone call and need something, you know, we've got a motions hearing on Monday, can you turn this around? Now, if you are a court reporter in a courtroom setting and you work for an agency, first you consider your own schedule, and then you say, you know, well, I'm heading out of town for spring break with my kids tomorrow, perhaps, if that's the truth, you might say. So let me call my agency and see who they've got to turn this work around so that I can just sign off on it when I return. There are ways to work around things, but it's communication, communication, and communication. You don't take it on yourselves to make a decision on something on behalf of the agency. However, if you're headed out to a vacation in Hawaii or something, you don't have to give up your vacation either because some attorney is unprepared. My son likes to call it, you know, your emergency does not necessarily make it my emergency. You do want to, of course, set yourself up and work as hard as you can to, forgive me, I'm forgetting about you guys, work as hard as you can to make to set yourself up so that these things wouldn't just knock you flat and you could get the things turned around. Excuse me. But also you just need to know how get the lay of the land. Sometimes a judge expects the impossible. I had a judge back in the day when I was still working with the fancy tape recorder, and he turns around after a long day in court on a contentious trial, and they're fighting right and left, and he says, I need you to get me that motion real quick. I'm going to be going over paperwork in here in the office, and I've got to have it so I can make that the last thing. He needed it like in the next 30 or 40 minutes or an hour. That meant I had to first find it on the recording and then transcribe it and get it to him. And of course I marked rough draft on it because I had to cover myself. There was no time for proofreading. You know, if you come this far in your work, you are an intelligent person. Don't let that brain go out the window when somebody wants something in a hurry or someone says, this is wrong, can you fix it? You know, think what you're doing. Talk to your agency people who are your mentors, at least for the most part, and then you take action. In court, you learn to go to the restroom and take care of necessities on a break. You know, that's actually a good habit that'll serve you well all your life. Anyway, you learn to not say the wrong thing when we used to walk through the jurors to get into our office. And on a contentious trial, you know, you don't want to say anything about anybody because it's impossible to tell who all is right at your elbow. Things like that. All right, I feel like I went off track. Is that?
That's good points. That's good points.
Okay.
I think also just a reminder too that
Are governed by the Judicial Council, so that's really important to be mindful of that. Also to know, like I think that Janice alluded to, is that get to know your courtroom, get to know the clerk, understand the system. Even if the agency is telling you one thing, it benefits you to get to know the lay of the land. Just like agencies have different cultures, courtrooms have different cultures. An example I would use of this, I'm a big anecdote person because that's just how I learn. You know, the first judge that Mom worked for, it was I was a tomboy growing up, so it was a lot about, like, you know, baseball caps and neat, you know, and dirty sneakers. But when I would go see Mom's Superior Court judge she worked for, I was very buttoned up, sat in a corner, you know, speak unless you're spoken to. So then, you know, he retires, another judge comes on the bench. The moment that I met him, I stuck out my hand to talk to him, and he grabbed me and he hugged me, and he was like, hey, you know, and a very open, you know, much different experience, very casual, very warm. And so you just need to get to know. And if you're pursuing an officialship or a courtroom position, that's important to consider that too. Ask about the culture when you're interviewing for the job. Try to ask if you can come in and observe a couple of days and get to know that particular courtroom and the people in it. Okay, next slide, thanks. So now I'm going to talk about depositions. So depositions are much different animals, some similarities, some differences. We do at our firm a lot of personal injury work, plaintiff's work, wrongful death, workman's comp, all of it. Understand that you're there to take the record, not make friends or judgments on the case. That's important when doing deposition work. An example I would use is a very seasoned court reporter of ours. When she just got started in the field, she sat down to take a deposition, and at a break, one of the attorneys looked at her and said, do you think you did it? You think you did it? And so those are the sort of, and she was like, it's not, I'm just here to take the record. It's not for me to, And so you'll have moments like that where you really have to ethically make sure that you're neutral. Remember the scales of justice, being very neutral. And then we had another court reporter that she called me up on a deposition, and she said, don't put me with that attorney anymore. And I was like, how come? Is everything okay? She said she didn't invite me to lunch, and she invited all the other attorneys to lunch. So I had to explain to her, you're not there to make, my brother calls it show business, not show friends. And I was like, okay, very good. But yeah, you're not there to make friends. You're there to take the record. And so take the time in a deposition, assert yourself to get what you need in terms of their order and clarification on exhibits. Attorneys, we do a lot of out-of-town work. Oftentimes attorneys are, once the deposition is concluded, they're out the door and ready to go to get to the airport. It's a delicate balance, but it's one that you'll learn with time about asserting yourself in the room. Asserting yourself to say, hey guys, stop a second. I see that you marked exhibit 4, but it says exhibit 5. I'm confused. Okay, you said you wanted you want the transcript. When do you want it by? Stuff like that, just understanding everything. Also, if you can't hear in a room, saying, hey, hold on just a second, I can't hear. If there's even a situation, this is very delicate stuff. It's not easy to determine, but we had a situation where we had to work with the attorney to make a judgment call on the deposition because a translator was needed recently. So it's things like that, your commitment to the records above all else. And lean on the firm to get additional questions answered. That's what an agency is there for. you're not there to sit at the job and then someone asks you, so how much is this going to cost me? Kick it back to them and say, you know, I work for an agency for a reason. I'm committed to the record here. I'm getting the record. Here's my card. I'll have the agency follow up with you. Do you have a card? Stuff like that. Also, it's important to just lean on the firm to get additional questions answered. We had a situation just recently where some attorneys out of California asserted the California stipulation. Are you familiar with that? Okay, that's where an attorney will say, hey, I'm not going to order a copy, I'll share his. Well, in Georgia, we call that theft of service. And so that's important that, you know, the reporter called us and said they asserted the California stipulation. And so, yeah, how are we going to manage that? So we had to talk to our clients and educate them about what it means to share copies in Georgia. Does anybody have any questions about deposition work at all?
I have a couple of remarks to that.
Yeah, please.
California, and New Jersey, I think, this, you know, we have an attorney look at you and say, like she said, is, or we get that free. Sometimes they'll want their own and they'll say, well, I'm in California, so we get it free. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I didn't tell them I was going to give it to them free. The other side of that case is going to give it to them free because I'm charging them. See, that's how their rules work. They say, this is California and New Jersey now, and maybe other states, but the basis of that has to do with the litigants. They are saying, their law says, if I sue you, then you shouldn't have to pay for all your copies of the discovery. It doesn't say the court reporter has to give it to you, you see. So the attorneys come out of state, they're going to do some deposition work, and everybody flies in and all, and they're staying at the Ritz or somewhere, you know, and they want to tell you you've got to give them a copy. Well, as this is practical, I'm a very practical person. I've learned a lot over the years. What you're going to do is say, sure, you don't have to make an issue of it at the deposition table, number one. Number two, you give rule number two is that the visiting counsel is not, or the guy you're going to charge extra, he probably hasn't even asked what the rates are anyway. He's got a good case. That's another thing. Attorneys are usually A-OK as clients if they've flown in from out of state somewhere because they got a good case or they would not be flying in from East Jerusalem or wherever. You know, they're tracking that case. They're expecting to get a bundle. Why should you be poor over what they're doing? So you just very professionally and nicely make, like you're making a note, and what your note's saying is, charge the taking attorney for all of this. And then when I get that in the office, I'm adding the normal 0-1 to the copy price, or adding the copy to the 0-1, and that's what the 0-1 guy gets. Now, let me tell you what else the 0-1 guy gets. He gets a printed off copy that had you build the copy side, you would have sent them the full deal. So this guy who was expecting perhaps an 0-1, maybe he knew he'd get an 0-2, you send him the full Monty. And then whenever, if it happens, usually it doesn't, but I've had a couple of times when they'd call back and said, my bill is really high, and I'm like, well, that's because I had to charge you for their copy. And you didn't stand up and say, no, we're not, you know, he has to pay for it. You didn't say anything, so, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this. What would you have me do? I'm not going to pay for it. Well, then you won't ever get your original to go to court. I mean, don't allow anybody to pick on you, but you handle it professionally. I think we've gone too long. We probably need to start wrapping up. I'll hush.
Okay, now, anybody have any questions about that? Now, how many of you are nations under oath? Okay, examinations under oath, we all understand that insurance companies, you have the opportunity to, with an insurance claim, if they don't give you the money that you want out of it, that you can be examined under oath and take the case further. Is that pretty much, did I describe that well enough? Okay, and so an EUO can be at an insurance company, it can be in a law firm, it can be at someone's house. It's important in working with an agency, if you get assigned to an EUO, to make sure that you're clear of how the work is to be done. We do examinations under oath for an insurance company. We also do examinations under oath for a law firm, an insurance defense firm, both of which want their examinations handled very differently. It's important for you, when you get assigned a job, to go over those directions very carefully. Ask further questions of the agency before you go out and do the job. Okay, next. Any questions on EUOs? Okay. So next is hearings. Now, hearings can be a Department of Transportation hearing, they can be a public health meeting, or they can be a hearing before the Board of Pardons and Paroles. I asked one of our reporters, what's the secret to hearings? And she said, ask for the speaker list in advance. Go and see if you can look at the room in advance of the hearing, so you can understand how you want to be set up. Make sure to have double, triple backup recordings, is what she said. Because hearings are difficult. We honestly do very few of those, because reporters, it's challenging to do a hearing with multiple parties talking and antiquated recording software at a location. Any other, Mom, you want to give any feedback on hearings?
You should never be late, but you don't be late for a hearing. So if they tell you it starts at 7:30, you be there no later than 6:45. You get your equipment out and get it together, and then you turn around and you start looking for the clerk or the secretary or whoever's going to come into that courtroom with the judge. They usually come in first, and you go up there, hi, I'm Janice Baker. I'm going to be the court reporter. Tell me anything I need to know, you know, and they're usually quite friendly. It is, after all, the South. Everybody likes to talk. So they'll tell you anything they know. And then you'll say, do you think His Honor would mind, or Her Honor would mind, if I put a small recording, I keep saying tape recorder, digital recorder on his desk, I guess you call it, on the bench. And they'll usually say no. Should I go in there and tell His Honor what I'm doing? You know, all those things. You just laid the groundwork, and things will go smooth. The person who says, "Oh, I can never do a hearing again," is the person who walked in late, couldn't get a seat down front, didn't know who to ask, didn't get a calendar, and couldn't find their case, you know, that they're supposed to report. And they've got all these problems, but if you sit down and talk to them, you realize they brought every one of those problems on themselves. So you don't be that person.
And then next,
Interpreters and videos. So interpreters and videos, I call this sort of the special situation slide. There's not much really to be said about this other than they can be tough, but you can get rewarded with it because you make more money. We at our agency charge 10% extra for interpreters, video depositions, things like that. Medical, technical transcripts, we charge, our reporters charge 10% extra on their pages. And that's pretty industry standard, actually. I asked some reporters, so what do you do with a case where it's someone, we had one guy from the Congo last week. We did his examination under oath. I said, how did you handle that? She was like, you know, it was challenging at first, but I will say this, that as an examination goes on, just like with your native language, you pick up patterns and rhythms within their speaking, so it becomes easier over time. And she encouraged me to tell you guys not to freak out, like the moment you sit down and it's a different language than you're used to hearing. To sit back, be patient with yourself, and recognize that patterns are going to emerge in their speaking. You'll go along the way and start to understand more and more and more. Video jobs, not as tough, but you can also make money. Make sure that you get the videographer's audio when you're on a video deposition, because the mic is at their lapel, and you want to have a one-to-one match with your transcript with the audio of the videographer. And get to know the videographer. Any questions about stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah.
Always make a digital recording of everything you do. I could tell you horror stories. I know that everybody works these days on voice recognition or a CAT system for machine writers. And forgive me if you're a machine writer in here, I'm not familiar with what they call that these days, having been out of the loop a while. But you always have to have a digital recording, because inevitably, you know, something can happen. Again, back to you get tired. I've sat down in jobs that went 8 to 12 hours. You know, I was in a courtroom one time where we started that morning and we stopped at 2 a.m. the next morning. I mean, you get tired. So you're working on really hard on using all the techniques and the knowledge you're gaining in the school, and you're putting it into practice on your machine. But nobody is so smart that they never have to look at that audio, listen to that audio and find a spot that was right, because what are you after ultimately? An accurate, make it 100% accuracy if you can do it, transcript. You know, you don't want anybody calling you back and saying, I could have sworn we said thus and so right here. You know, you got to go back and check something, and obviously your own taken notes didn't work, so in that spot. So, you know, you got to have something to go back to.
And so finally, I'll talk a little bit about advocacy and ethics. Always be a neutral party. Find a mentor. I always like to tell the story that I've had the fortune of having several mentors throughout my career. When you do find a mentor, it's invaluable. Seek one out, talk to someone, share experiences, things like that, and be prepared that when you have a mentor, it's not always going to be sunshine and roses. My best mentors held me accountable for everything related to my career. So you have to have yourself open to the constructive feedback that comes with having a mentor. Also, join a professional association, NCRA, NVRA, things like that. There's a Machine Writers Association in Atlanta. Join that. Build a network. We have a group of women that we hired in from Brown, and since they've become their own network of young professionals. They saw me at a conference and kind of came to me in a pack and said, hey, let's go have drinks and talk about everything. And it was great, because I was with 5 or 6 new reporters, and they were sharing everything and talking about it. It was wonderful. And so all of that, you guys are going to be tremendously successful. You're going to a great school, continue to go, graduate from Brown. Don't stop just because you passed the test. Finish out your experience here and take everything, every offering that the school offers you. Mark does a tremendous job of getting you guys guest speakers. Hear from everybody. So there you go. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
When in the instance where you have to do a deposition, you have to write down like what you say to the people?
It just depends. Do you want to answer that? Do you?
Yes. Unless what you said is just the most fabulous thing, words that ever were uttered. The answer to that is no, but what you will do is handle it in a paren. That's the old term for parentheticals. What do y'all call that these days? Parentheticals. So that's your paren. And what you would say is, whereupon the reporter and the witness or whoever it was, did such and such, discussed, and after which the following transpired. Thereupon, an off-the-record discussion transpired. I think that thereupon business you guys have dropped over the years. That's another old thing. But, an off-the-record discussion, you handle it in some way. And then you go right back to by Mr. Smith and QA.
Anybody have any other questions that I can answer? I have my cards up here if you're interested in externships. I will say ours is a little unique. Mark Mark knows sort of I have a higher level of expectations on a lot of our externships. I like for people to come into the agency and spend a day. I really ask for interviews, things like that. I want to approach it the way that you'll be approached as a professional in the field. And so thanks again, everyone. I appreciate your time. I have my cards. I'm available.
Appreciate it, guys. And we got less than 10 minutes to eat. To the next class. Oh, leave your surveys. Oh, you give them to me. Finish them. If you don't finish them today, no problem. Just bring it to the front desk and leave it at the desk of my office.